I was tortured and then continue to be cruelly mistreated by the legendary assassin from Amnesty International, Breton Peter Gabriel, who has his tendrils in occupation at Carnegie Mellon University and UW Dialectical. I'm home with tremors in my legs and hands from years and years of brutal mistreatment. The doctors are praying for the miracle that rest might help me, so I'm going to accommodate that um, forlorn hope. But I'll make this tape. I'm not going to dwell on my personal ailments because I know that it's a lost cause and anybody's going to care about that. Many years ago, back in the 80s, I began to wake up to the fact that, or was snap fingers awakened to the fact that what had been done to me as a child was not the random crime that I had taken it for, that it was impersonal sociological militarism. And I went back to the neighborhood to try to find someone who might be able to help me understand. And I went to visit Lou Brecker, not yet conscious of the fact that his name was part of the index that included Michel Lubin. Um, the Bush transformation system, I want to put on the air. A fact has largely won, and I realized that when I saw Barack Obama with Miss Greta Thunberg. Even though she was very little, I mean, with Obama, you can rule out maturity. Maturity isn't a consideration when it comes to Obama. He's an important Christian. That's all we need to know. Under Obama, blacks became guilty of everything that they've ever accused Americans of. Um, the crimes and horrors that were inflicted on me personally by the Obama administration continue to serve as a blackout impetus for Biden. And I witnessed them working with Trumpy. If you doubt that, take a look at Tim Kaine's various legendary pitches for Ronald Reagan. He was a virtually invisible man as vice presidential candidate for Hillary Clinton, except that he defended Reagan as Al Gore used to. Just as the Democratic Party were the machine of the Vietnam War. So after I left, I got a call that Lou had died. You know, he had a heart attack or something. Now, I have heart problems from what they've done to me, so I know that it was a personal loss and tragedy for everyone who loved him. And since I had been proximate and I needed to find out what I could learn, I agreed to attend the funeral with even Paul Bear. Afterwards, the redoubtable Pete Shell of a drug accomplice of John Schulman at Carnegie Mellon University, working with Andrea Swimmer, Schulman, and Jaime Carbonell, started saying to me, "You've been porking anybody lately, Curry? You've been porking anybody lately, Curry?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, Pete." Tied her up and porked her with a carrot. Now, this magic bunny comment went through the ranks of the union, who decided they put me on the cover of a Cine Film Quarterly with an image of put me inside. They printed a letter of mine about conspiracies inside Cine's Film Quarterly, a worldwide cinema magazine, and put L.A. Confidential on the cover. This is relevant because L.A. Confidential has a scene of a black gang who tie a woman to a bed and repeatedly rape her. Jaime Carbonell could have called my parents, the Pit Police, and asked where this comment came from. He was supposedly uh, uh, um, um, language expert. And he would have learned that I was held hostage as a child by brutal pedophiles who tortured me who overdubbed that as comments with someone who was known to have acted out such activities with them for fun from Climax One. But instead, he played Ghetto Buster. They came in with somebody named Harcourt, Laughtercourt, and said I was making a joke and that I was intrinsically corrupt, a white, they said. And Andrea Swimmer would prove it. Andrea Swimmer was a starlet from Neva Corporation who forced herself on me when I was a child. I tried to help her to no avail. I was being targeted by her. Okay, Martin Alderman came to her defense from Wells Fargo. Martin Alderman was known to be a charlatan, a liar, and a crook, just as Sean Schulman was busted on an $8 million museum heist. But what did they have in tow was a hidden trump up their sleeve, a little script they had written, in which the trump was the claim that John Lennon died. So they swooped in with Peter Gabriel and Yoko Ono and said, we're going to get revenge for the pure, good, wholesome Nazi party of Europe. Now, Gerald Horne plays a role in this in the direction of his thinking. Gerald Horne is a lot like Vladimir Putin. You have to be very careful of him. The direction of his violence is perfectly obvious and very, very serious. Like many Muslims, his theses and historic research is corrupted by uh, the dogging, clanging of the ideological motive. Everything has to be interpreted in terms of race, white supremacy. It has to. And it gets less complicated when you get under the hood and see that he's working with white people. His thesis about me, for example, depends very heavily in its form of execution on the Democratic Party alliance to protect Ronald Reagan. But the NAACP in Pittsburgh announced through entrapment and licky chops cameras the claim that I put them on their honor to defend David Duke and Lady Riefenstahl when I did nothing of the kind. The proclivity of human trafficking and black involvement in human trafficking in the Green Party is perfectly obvious from what Tacoma calls a fight club. Now, you can't assuage it no matter what you do. The violence and trafficking directed at me as a little child in Highland Park in Pittsburgh is perfectly obvious and would be obvious to anybody. In defense of Reagan and David Duke, Gerald Horne says no. He says this is the white man propertizing another man's wife who is colored. That's not what happened. It doesn't matter. No matter what you say to him, it'll go up against the clong of his ideological conception. He is intentionally ignorant. The purpose of the telltale clip couldn't be more obvious. It puts into semiotic form exactly what the operation contained eugenically as an international spy science from Ringo Starr, Vladimir Putin, Brian Eno, and the Pussy Ballers in the Royal House of Cards. Gerald Horne, no doubt, would say no. It was the white man propertizing the Indian woman. He doesn't care that she seduced me. He doesn't care that she took me home. She doesn't care that she represented her roommate against the assumption that it was another girl. He doesn't care that campus lovemaking is off limits to peep camera. He doesn't care about any of that. What he cares about is the empowerment of his corrupted ideas by Reagan, loyalty to Reagan. That's what the NAACP is doing. For example, when they murdered Shannon Harps over a penny, it was a white man who killed her. Yet it was the black man who was being avenged. How does that work? It works by the sleight of hands of UW dialectical, is how it works. Okay, they have an occupational obsession with brutalizing a deaf white child that couldn't can't be talked out of. Their spy master generals have made tons of money on the black market, which is obvious when you look at Andelman and Schulman's arrest, for example. Now, when you go back to the scene of the crime, the Lucky Chops tape of Pete Joe, Louis Lapham pitched in on this, said he wanted to do it because a contract landed on his desk to sign off on the civil rights of Larry Flint. And he refused because he said the Hustler magazine was against everything they stood for. But what was he standing for? The kidnapping and torture by defenders of Hustler magazine of a deaf little boy in trauma and tears of frightened, chemically altered slavery. And Louis Lapham, by refusing to sign it, he signed on board because he couldn't bring himself to say outright that that's what he was doing. He impinged on the persona, the magic tape, the magic bunny tape that they pulled out of their hat along with the Trump up the sleeve that they were holding. Okay, so meanwhile, while all this indexing was going on, Osho was living in the Graham building. Get that one. So what was I doing? Well, Schulman had said, why don't you be like Candide? Why don't you go back and find your past? I had a neurotrauma. I was trying to figure out what was going on, and they were taping to unearth what they had performed in all sadism and jeers on the queer bait. For who? For Midori Goto. Even after they conquered the so-called symbol of life and castrated and humiliated me, they still went on. They still after more licky chops. The very nature of the foul joke shows how coercive the environment was for me. And the Democrats have no intention of being diplomatic. They just said, turn it over to the David Dukes and turn it over to the gangsters. Let Black Lives Matter handle it for Reagan. And that's what we're really seeing here. If, there was a reason I couldn't watch it, but there was a terrorist attack on a Ukrainian soldier who was evidently castrated on film. Now, Zelensky quite rightly tried to probe the mind of the Russian army. What would make you want to do that to somebody? Well, if Black Lives Matter had done it to me, they would say, oh, because it's a white suck. And we're compensating the ancient through notorious gizmology of the critical race theorem. So, but it wasn't a white man who poisoned you? Also, for the Green Party, UW dialectical sort of they have a pea in the hat game they're playing while they set up pornographic genocide. So you can't get anybody, they say dialectical over the quality of water and so on. If you want a pure glass of water, you have to take a nerve agent and we'll give you a pure glass of water. This is the outcome of critical race theory. Now, when it comes to global phobia about white people, I think it's overblown to let David Duke and Lady Riefenstahl ride on high on that thesis. But the transformation of the world by George Bush is still underway with the Great Deluge of Pakistan and so forth.